When Russian President Vladimir Putin launched his supposed special military operation in Ukraine, he thought he had the skies covered. How could he not? Russia's air force was 13 times bigger than Ukraine's in 2025 and had an even greater advantage in 2022. But air superiority never came. Aircraft after aircraft was shot out of the skies during those early months, forcing Putin to pull his planes behind the front lines. Putin thought that his tactical switch made his planes safe. It didn't. Russia's air force is collapsing around him as Ukraine scores hit after hit on Putin's most valuable aircraft. Ukraine's strike rate is unbelievable, and the speed at which Ukraine is wiping out Putin's aerial advantage is hard to believe. On June 3rd, United 24 media reported that Ukraine's general staff had updated its official account of the number of aircraft Russia has lost since February 2022. The figure, according to the General Staff's Telegram post, is massive. A staggering 384 Russian planes will never take to the skies again, with 12 of those being destroyed on June 3rd alone. Those planes join 336 helicopters, 38,748 drones, and 3,271 cruise missiles, all of which Russia's air force was using to bombard Ukraine from the skies. Now, a little bit of quick math shows the true scale of the damage Ukraine has inflicted on Russia's air force. Since Putin launched his invasion in February 2022, around 39 months have passed. Using that number, it appears that Russia is losing aircraft at a rate of 9.8 per month. Helicopters fare a little better at 8.6 per month, but cruise missiles and drones are going down in their hundreds. Ukraine shoots down 993 drones per month on average, along with 83.8 cruise missiles. Of course, averages don't tell the whole story. There are some months where Russia attacks in huge volume, leading to more losses, and others where it relents a little. Still, those figures tell a clear story. Putin's attempt to rely on his air force to gain superiority over Ukraine are failing. United 24's report came in the wake of a devastating strike Ukraine conducted against Russia on Putin's own territory. Dubbed Operation Spiderweb, that June 1st strike saw Ukraine sneak dozens of quadcopter drones into Russia in specially designed storage crates on the backs of trucks. Those crates contained secret sealing compartments to keep the drones hidden from view. When Ukraine was ready, it used unwitting Russian drivers to transport those trucks close to several key Russian airbases. Then the drones were released. Olenya airbase in the Murmansk region was hit hard, so was Belaya airbase in Irkutsk, along with several others. By the end of the attack, Russia had lost 34% of its strategic cruise missile carriers, including several dozens of its Tu-95MS and Tu-22 M3 bombers, along with a pair of A-50 aircraft that carry radars, delivering vital data to Russia's fighter jet pilots. There's another video covering Operation Spiderweb and how Ukraine pulled it off on our channel. Check it out for the full details, which include the planning that went into the assault and what Ukraine managed to achieve. This would have all been bad enough for Russia. The loss of nearly 400 aircraft, around 40 of which were destroyed in Operation Spiderweb alone over 3 years, is a massive problem for Putin. But it's only gotten worse since United 24 published the Ukraine General Staff's figures. Since then, Ukraine has launched several more successful strikes, targeting some of the most valuable aircraft in Putin's arsenal. On June 8, Aviasy Online was among the first to report on a devastating Ukrainian strike that took out a Russian Su-35 fighter jet somewhere over the Kursk region. Ukraine announced the strike officially, but didn't provide any details about how it was carried out. That led to rampant speculation, with many believing that Ukraine had managed to destroy the Su-35 using one of the F-16s it's received from its Western partners. That would have been impressive. The Su-35 is Russia's flagship 4.5th generation fighter, while the F-16 is older and is a generation behind. Later reports, including those published by military correspondent David Axe and the Avivector X account, dispelled the F-16 rumor. According to updated information, the Su-35 fighter jet that took off from the Boryska-Glebsk airbase was shot down by a surface-to-air missile system. Avivector claimed on the evening of June 7. Axe reported the same on June 7, using the Avivector X post as a reference. But he also noted that the possibility of F-16s taking out a Su-35 is growing. It would have been the first confirmed kill by Ukraine's slowly growing fleet of ex-European F-16s, Axe wrote, and given the circumstances, an F-16 kill is increasingly likely. Translation: Ukraine has done so much damage to the Russian Air Force that Russia is slowly losing the supporting aircraft, such as its A-50s, that its Su-35s need to defend against Ukraine's F-16s. More on that issue a little later in the video. For now, it's hard to underestimate what Ukraine achieved on June 7. How it destroyed a Russian Su-35 is irrelevant at this point. The simple fact that it did means it's taken out an aircraft that is extremely valuable to Putin. The Su-35 is estimated to cost around $85 million per unit, says Aerotime, and it's one of the most powerful multi-role fighters Russia is capable of deploying. According to Army Recognition, the Su-35 is crewed by 2 people and is capable of reaching a maximum speed of 1,485 miles per hour. The jet has a maximum range of 2,237 miles, meaning it can penetrate deep into Ukraine's territory, and it's packed with enough weaponry to cause some major damage. Across its 12 hardpoints, the Su-35 is loaded with a variety of air-to-air missiles, including the RWAE and the R-73E, along with air-to-surface missiles such as the KH-59M and KH-29T. It can also carry various types of guided and dumb bombs, in addition to being equipped with a GSH-301 cannon that's loaded with 150 rounds. Simply put, the Su-35 is a heavy hitter. Thanks to Ukraine, Russia is down one more of the aircraft, of which the Kyiv Independent says that it has around 100. And there's more. According to Euromaidan Press, the night of June 9 saw Ukraine launch yet another attack that took out a valuable Russian aerial asset. This time, the target was a Savasleyka airbase, which is nestled deep in the Nizhny Novgorod Oblast, that is around 700 miles away from Ukraine. Euromaidan says Russia has repeatedly used this airfield to organize strikes on Ukrainian territory. It may still be able to do that in the future, but it'll have to do it without what Ukraine managed to destroy on June 9. A MiG-31 carrier. That carrier, says Euromaidan, is capable of carrying Russia's hypersonic Kinzhal missile, which is believed to be capable of reaching speeds up to Mach 12. Able to carry both conventional and nuclear warheads, the missile is devastating thanks to having a payload weighing up to 1,102 pounds. Euromaidan calls it one of the most feared weapons in Russia's arsenal for these reasons. Now, Putin's Air Force has lost one of the few planes it had that was capable of firing the Kinzhal. As importantly, it's lost one of the aircrafts that was within range of Ukraine. And it gets worse for Putin from there. The Kyiv Independent says that the MiG-31 wasn't the only aircraft Ukraine destroyed with its Savasleyka. According to Ukraine's general staff, it also seems likely that Ukraine managed to take out either a Su-30 or Su-34, though this has yet to be confirmed, as the damage done to Russia's airbase is still being assessed. Either way, this is another massive loss for Russia. After all, just like the Su-35 Ukraine destroyed a day prior, the MiG-31 is one of Putin's most important aircraft. Army Recognition says the aircraft has the NATO codename Foxhound and was developed to replace Russia's older MiG-25s. Though the MiG-31 entered production during the Soviet era, it wasn't unveiled officially until the 1991 Paris Air Show. It's also the fastest production aircraft in the world, capable of reaching speeds up to Mach 2.35 over a maximum range of 1,864 miles. Crewed by 2 people, the MiG-31 is a fighter jet that comes with an internal 23mm GSH-623 cannon that Russia says can rattle off about 10,000 rounds per minute. As for missiles, its main armament is the R-33 air-to-air missile, though it's also being refitted so that it can carry Russia's more modern Vimpel R-77s. It's a terrifying aircraft that Military Machine says is among the 25 most expensive fighter jets in the world thanks to its per unit cost of $33.2 million. And now, just like the Su-35 from a day earlier, and the dozens of Russian bombers and 2 A-50s Ukraine destroyed in Operation Spiderweb, it lies in tatters. Yet another victim of Ukraine's campaign to decimate Russia's air force. And there's more bad news for Putin. Remember the figures shared from Ukraine's general staff earlier in the video? Those figures came from a week ago, and they already seem to be out of date. At least that's according to Ukraine's Ministry of Finance, which claims that the toll of Russian aircraft losses has now reached 416 as of June 10. Assuming those numbers are accurate, Russia's monthly aircraft losses have climbed above 10 for the first time since the early months of Putin's invasion. All of this leads to an obvious question. What does Ukraine's unbelievable strike rate mean for Russia and the future of the Ukraine war? In the immediate sense, it doesn't seem like Russia is going to be running out of aircraft anytime soon. At least that's according to Global Firepower, or GFP, which ranks 145 nations based on their military strength every year. According to GFP, Russia still has 4,292 aircraft in its stockpiles, of which 2,790 are combat ready. Of those aircraft that are good to go, 541 of them are fighter jets and 448 are attack types such as bombers that Russia could use to hurt Ukraine. Russia also has 296 combat-ready fixed-wing transports, along with 92 special mission aircraft and a tanker fleet of 12 planes. It's also worth remembering that Statista suggests that Russia's air force, at least when it comes to sheer number of assets, still outnumbers Ukraine's by 13-1 in 2025. Hearing these stats may make one question whether Ukraine has actually managed to pull off anything at all by destroying around 400 of the Russian Air Force's aircraft. It has, and that's evident because the raw numbers, as so often been the case during Putin's Ukraine invasion, doesn't tell the full story. The reality is that Russia has been struggling with its aircraft for quite a while, with Ukraine's accelerated rate of strikes over the last few weeks only adding to a problem that's been brewing below the surface for a long time. For starters, combat-ready aircraft don't equate to aircraft that are deployable in Ukraine. Much of Russia's air force is so far behind the front lines that it's not able to contribute to Putin's invasion. Other aircraft that would otherwise be combat-ready are also being used as trainers or for the maintenance of those that Putin is deploying. But Russia's air force problem goes deeper than that. Back in March 2024, RAND published an article where it claimed that the Russian Air Force was on the verge of hollowing itself out over a year ago. RAND said at the time that one of Putin's biggest problems, beyond Ukraine directly destroying Russian aircraft, is that those Russia is deploying are quickly burning through their already limited lifespans. Just look at many of the aircraft that Ukraine has destroyed over the last few months to see what that means. Many, including the bombers taken out during Operation Spiderweb and the MiG-31, are either Soviet-era aircraft or were unveiled not long after the Soviet Union collapsed. This means that they have 30 years or more mileage on them. Sure, many will have been upgraded to extend their lifespans, but that doesn't mean much when they're being used constantly to launch missiles and glide bombs at Ukraine. RAND's point is that much of Russia's stockpile, even back in March 2024, was already creaking at the seams. It claims that by that point, over a year ago, Russia's air force was already down to only 75% of the strength it had at the beginning of Putin's invasion. Imputed losses, which are the losses of aircraft due to overuse, are running rampant in Russia's air force. Between January and March 2024 alone, RAND says Russia lost an estimated 60 aircraft due to this problem. That's the equivalent of losing 26 new airframes per year at a time when Russia is only building about 20 new Su-30, Su-34 and Su-35s annually. RAND also explains this overuse problem is also one of the reasons why Russia is switching back to relying on its newer airframes to conduct attacks on Ukraine. Its Su-27s and MiG-31s are already relegated to firing hypersonic missiles from behind the front lines. Remember that Ukraine took out one of the latter on June 9. As of March 2024, the average Su-27 only had about 20% of its lifespan left, with the MiG-31 not faring much better with an average of 35% left. That was over a year ago. Those average lifespans will have decreased markedly since then, and all of the while, Russia is being forced to deploy its more valuable fighters, such as the Su-35, closer to the front lines. That's another problem for Putin. These newer fighters cost more money, and they're still primarily being used to fire missiles at Ukraine from inside Russia itself. Putin hasn't been able to leverage all of that extra spending to establish aerial superiority in Ukraine itself. Every newer airframe Putin sends closer to the front lines becomes a target as soon as it arrives at an airfield. And as Ukraine has proven time and time again in June alone, it can hit those airfields with missiles and drones to take out Russia's newer fighter jets at a time when its Soviet-era platform stockpiles are practically exhausted. RAND concluded that providing more air defense systems to Ukraine back in March 2024 would have allowed it to twist the knife deeper into the Russian Air Force's side. Those systems took a while to arrive, and Ukraine could always use more. But perhaps it's now taking advantage of the fact that many of Russia's aircraft are aging out of its air force. The point here is that the raw numbers don't tell the full story. Yes, Russia has thousands of aircraft in its arsenal, as GFP claims. But how many hundreds or even thousands of those aircraft, already nearing the end of their lives, are in such states of disrepair that they're practically useless to Russia? The true number might never be known. Coming back to 2025, Ukraine's accelerated rate of strikes is causing more problems on top of this aging issue. Take the bombers Ukraine destroyed during Operation Spiderweb. As mentioned earlier, this single operation took out about a third of the bombers Russia has available for attacking Ukraine. According to the Moscow Times, most of those bombers aren't going to be replaced, at least not during the Ukraine war. On June 6, the outlet published an article courtesy of Reuters which claimed that it would take Russia years to replace the nuclear-capable bombers Ukraine destroyed during Operation Spiderweb. Reuters quotes Justin Bronk, an aviation expert with the Royal United Services Institute, as claiming that Russia's bomber losses will put major pressure on a key Russian force that was already operating at maximum capacity. Western sanctions have made it extremely difficult for Russia to obtain the components it needs to repair the avionics systems its damaged bombers use, and it's unclear how many, if any, spare airframes Russia has. And speaking of Operation Spiderweb, that devastating strike is also believed to have taken out two of Russia's A-50 aircraft. Don't underestimate how vital these support crafts are to Russia. The A-50 is a radar plane, says David Axe in a June 8 article, and Russia uses it to watch the skies across the Ukraine war's front lines. A-50s provide Russia's other aircraft, including its Su-35s, with extended radar coverage. Think of them as an early warning system. An A-50's radar detects incoming aerial threats, especially those that are crossing the front lines, and relays that information to the intended target. That target can then ready defenses, such as evasive maneuvers in the case of a fighter jet, or anti-air defenses if the target is a military installation, several minutes before the airborne threats arrive. Right now, Axe says Russia has 6 or fewer active A-50s. The number may be as low as 3. That's a massive problem for Putin because, as Axe explains, Russia needs 9 of these aircraft to cover the entire 700-mile front line of the Ukraine war. Right now, he only has enough for 1 of his 3 required orbits, which are collectives of 3 A-50s that cycle in and out of the battlefield, meaning Russia can't scan for incoming aerial threats everywhere it needs to. Gaps have been created, and those gaps are going to be huge for Ukraine as it launches yet more assaults against the Russian Air Force. Every base that is in range of Russia's missiles or drones is now under greater risk of being hit because where Putin deploys his dwindling stockpiles of A-50s determines whether or not they get a warning when Ukraine's missiles and drones cross the border into Russia. Many won't know a strike is happening until it's on top of them. By that point, it'll often be too late. And the result? Even more Russian aircraft are going to be destroyed because Russia doesn't have enough A-50s in the skies. And the idea that Russia could just build more? That's not happening. It scrapped plans to do that in 2024, not long after Ukraine hit the Taganrog facility that's responsible for building and maintaining A-50s. No more are coming, and that's terrible news for a Russian Air Force that's already dealing with more Ukrainian attacks and its assets running close to the end of their lifespans. Back in March, the UK Defence Journal said that an intelligence update created by the UK's Ministry of Defence, or MOD, outlined the problem Russia faced. Air superiority is an impossibility for Russia now, the MOD report claimed. Such Ukrainian successes highlight Russia's continued inability to protect strategic military sites from attack, as well as indicating the challenge confronting Russia to protect its infrastructure, balanced against protecting its operations on the front line. The MOD claimed when referencing a then recent spate of Ukrainian strikes against Russian oil refineries. Now, Russia's air force may no longer be able to strike the balance the MOD says that it needs. Ukraine has destroyed even more of its aircraft. Even more will follow, especially now that Russia doesn't have the A-50s it needs to detect Ukraine's missiles and drones across the entire front line. It may only be a matter of months before a Russian air force that is already on life support collapses entirely. Now, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our deep dive into Russia's A-50 situation and what it means for Russia's air force, military installations, and soldiers on the ground. And remember to subscribe to the Military Show if you want more up-to-date video commentary covering the latest tactics Ukraine is using to damage Putin's war machine.